Freelance copywriters or business owners that sell a product, we want to make the problem front and center so that we get people to act, we get people to spring into action and click that buy button. And if your email subject line and the content within the email are good, you can get incredible sales results. Starting any sales copy with a problem usually gets people's ears to prick up, because here's another part of human nature. We tend to focus on problems, and we tend to focus, unfortunately, on what's wrong. Dating back to our caveman times, we were wired to zero in on potential threats and danger. So as humans today, even though we've evolved and life has become so comfortable for so many of us, we still have this habit of seeking and scanning our environment for things that are going wrong. Therefore, problems are going to capture our attention the most. So using the PAS formula in your email copywriting is going to involve you starting that first sentence by pointing out a problem that your prospect has. Email copywriting is such a lucrative skill to learn right now, whether you are a business owner yourself or you're a copywriter like me who writes emails for their clients. Selling via email gives you a direct line of access to your ideal client. Just think of it like this. When you're writing an email, you're on somebody's phone. So they're checking their phone in bed, on the toilet, at the dinner table. So you really have this direct line of access to your ideal customer. And if your email subject line and the content within the email are good, you can get incredible sales results. If it feels like emails have made this sudden resurgence and everybody's talking about it right now, it's for a few reasons. One being the most recent iOS update that has made advertising channels like Facebook ads much harder to track and has driven up the cost. So if you're trying to sell your own products or services online, or you're a freelance copywriter like me that needs to offer really high quality emails to your clients, this video is for you. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to use the copywriting formula PAS, which stands for Problem, Agitate, Solution. And you can use this in a variety of different emails, whether it's a sales email where a sales rep is trying to book a meeting, or you're trying to get somebody to click the buy now button, whether it is a marketing nurture sequence or a newsletter. But either way, stay until the end, because I'm going to share with you a trick that I use every single day to improve my email copywriting skills with something called a swipe file. If you're looking for freelance business advice or wanting to level up your freelance income, definitely subscribe to this channel. Click the like button because it's a free way to support me. Now, I want to share with you why I love email copywriting. It's actually how I got my start unknowingly as a copywriter. If you've been watching any of the videos on my channel, you know my story. You know I was in sales for the majority of my 20s. My entire career was a B2B salesperson selling technology to other companies. So around 2015, 2016 was really when automated prospecting software came on the market, which basically means that it allowed sales reps to send a high volume of emails that looked personalized to prospects to book meetings and eventually close the deal. So this was a huge development in the technology and software world for salespeople, because up until that point, we were doing something called mail merges, where we would gather a bunch of email lists by hand, throw it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then click all these different buttons to make your email service provider send out a bunch of those emails. And it would basically personalize the email based on the different cells. So it was very tedious. It was a very labor-intensive process for sales reps who have this aggressive quota to hit. So this software at the time was called Zen Prospect. I'll never forget, because I was part of a really small startup sales team, and we were talking about the different automated prospecting softwares available, and we eventually went with Zen Prospect. They eventually rebranded to Apollo IO. But the reason I'm even telling you this story is because prospecting software really allowed sales reps for the first time to be sending creative emails in a way that allowed them to do what a marketer does, which is A/B test subject lines, see your open rates, see your click-through rates. So as sales reps, we were able to create what are called email sequences and actually see the results from a numbers standpoint of whether or not that message resonated. Did you book a meeting? And I'll never forget, within my small sales team, I was chosen to share what my best practices were for writing these emails, because I was booking so many meetings with my message, with my subject line via this automated prospecting software. So I didn't know it back then, and it would be years before I actually got into copywriting. But that was my first experience of being a copywriter, just being a salesperson who was booking their own meetings by creating these captivating messages and seeing which CEOs I could book meetings with. Now, as somebody who has transitioned to full-time freelance copywriter, completely left the sales world behind. The reason why I love email marketing and email selling in general is because it's like an experiment, right? It's about whether or not you got a good subject line. What was your preview text? What character count works best in the body of an email? And what's interesting with copywriting in general is that people mistakenly, when they first learn about copywriting, think that this is going to be like typical forms of writing, like journalism, or even writing a book. It's not. Here's the analogy I use for copywriting. So when I was younger, I'll never forget, I got one of those gifts where it's a book that includes all those different word magnets, and you would make different sentences and poems on your refrigerator or a magnetic wall. That's what copywriting really is like. It's taking words, it's swapping them out, it's changing the meaning of sentences, it's trying to find that one word that's going to make the biggest impact with the target audience. So copywriting is not a traditional form of writing. It's very sales oriented and it's very strategic. Now, there are so many different types of emails and everybody kind of has their own terminology for what these emails are, but I'm going to explain to you what the 3 most common types of emails that you'll use for your business or that you will use as a freelance copywriter to help the business owner. So the first one is a conversion-oriented sales email. And when I say conversion-oriented, it just means did that piece of copy get somebody to take the desired action? And that desired action could be clicking a link, booking a call, or buying something immediately. So a sales email, I'm going to say there's 2 most common that you'll probably run into. Number 1 is an actual sales email that comes from a sales rep and is attempting to book a meeting. So obviously the story I told at the beginning of the video, that was what I was doing as a sales rep. So as a B2B salesperson, it's a long sales cycle. Nobody is just buying with one click of an email. It's a process, right? There's many stages. You have to really warm somebody up. There's a lot of education. It's a longer sales cycle. Usually a sales rep is trying to get somebody on a call to build that rapport, educate them on the product, answer their questions. It's step 1 of a long process. But if you are in B2C or if you're in e-commerce, well, that's probably more of a direct sale of like, hey, we're running this promotion, click here and buy now. Either way, this is a very sales or conversion oriented email. Now, the second type of email is what I call a marketing nurture email. So marketing nurture emails are meant to build a relationship, nurture the relationship, and mostly it's by providing value. So a marketing nurture email will rarely ask for the sale. It's more likely going to lead you to a piece of content that's going to educate you, provide value, and they're hoping eventually once you're educated enough and you've gotten what you've needed, you'll be ready to buy. And that's what is meant by the word nurture. Companies nurture leads so that they'll eventually be ready to buy, ready to convert into a paying customer. So marketing emails could be driving to a number of different outcomes. It could be, hey, click this article and read this. It could be download this free gated asset, whether it be an ebook, a checklist, or some free content. It could also be promoting something like a webinar or a free live workshop where you're, again, being fed into a sales funnel where they're hoping that if you attend the workshop or the webinar, you'll eventually be ready to buy because of what you learned. Now, the third is a newsletter or promotional email. Some companies have newsletters where they cover a range of topics. It's choose your own journey. Hey, this is what we have going on this week. This is what we've gathered here. It's almost like a roundup style email. Then there's also the B2C sales promotional emails that you get from a clothing brand and just saying, hey, click here. We're running a 20% discount. I'm going to cover these emails the least because I don't believe that the PAS copywriting formula is as relevant to those emails. I actually think those emails are highly visual and therefore don't really need a ton of copywriting instruction. Now, before I get into the problem, agitate, solution copywriting formula and show you examples and teach you how to do this, just know that there are certain email copywriting best practices that you should be following. Also, if you're a freelance copywriter like me, you're going to want to suggest these to the client. So the number 1 rule, and I'm going to say this is the number 1 rule in writing anything, any type of copywriting project, is that you need to know your audience before you begin writing anything. Anything you write is going to be irrelevant if it is not targeted towards a certain persona and their problems and their desires. You don't know how to trigger somebody to action unless you know what they care about. So rule number 1 is do not start writing any sales emails unless you have that persona in your mind and you understand what drives them. Tip number 2, always stick with one CTA. CTA stands for call to action. So a mistake a lot of people make in an email is asking somebody to sign up for a free trial, but then also linking out to an article, but then also saying, hey, click here if you want to do this instead. If you confuse, you lose. And if you give people too many options, you will lose. Each email should have one CTA, one call to action. It's one thing that you want them to do from that specific email. This is going to depend, and again, it's going to take some testing, but try to keep your emails to 125 words. That's just what the research is telling us right now is most effective. When it comes to copywriting formulas for email, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're new to all of this, use the PAS, Problem, Agitate, Solution formula because it's easy and it applies to most emails. And this next tip is one that I need to constantly remind myself of and something that I really struggle with, which is that you actually should be spending more time on the subject line than the body of the email, because no matter if there is solid gold inside of that email, they're not going to click it unless there is an enticing subject line. So you should be dedicating the most time to your subject lines. Personally, I keep a bank of subject lines on hand that I know are psychology backed, and then I A/B test, but I'm going to go more into that at the end of the video when I talk about how to make your swipe file. So let's start off by first understanding the PAS copywriting formula, Problem, Agitate, Solution. So why do we start our emails by pointing out our prospect's problem? Why can't we start out with an aspiration or a desire or some other lead-in? Well, you always can start with something else. It's totally up to you on whether or not you want to use the PAS formula. But if you understand human nature and how we're wired, it's always more compelling to start with a problem because humans are more motivated by their problems than their aspirations for the most part. And the reason why this is true, I learned this from Donald Miller in his book, Building a Story Brand, but we really like homeostasis, we like consistency, and we like things to stay as they are. We don't necessarily go to rock the boat and completely change up our lives unless we're really prompted by a problem to do so. So if you can just understand that humans like to stay in their comfort zone, that's why changing habits and doing new things is a bit of a push, then you'll understand that it's ultimately problems that lead us to take action. So I'll just use weight loss as an example. So there's obviously the benefits of weight loss, which are being healthier, getting to wear a smaller size, feeling more confident. But when I look back to what actually got me to enroll in a weight loss program and dedicate myself to it, it's because I saw a photo of myself that me and my girlfriend took at a bar and I thought I looked too big, right? And that photo sent me absolutely spiraling and I felt so insecure, and I went to go seek out a solution, which was this program called Best Body by Rachel Paul. I absolutely love her, not sponsored. So if you're looking to lose weight, definitely check out her program. But it's ultimately problems that get us to act. And as freelance copywriters or business owners that sell a product, we want to make the problem front and center so that we get people to act. We get people to spring into action and click that buy button. Starting any sales copy with a problem usually gets people's ears to prick up, because here's another part of human nature. We tend to focus on problems and we tend to focus, unfortunately, on what's wrong. So just as humans, dating back to our caveman times, we were wired to zero in on potential threats and danger. So as humans today, even though we've evolved and life has become so comfortable for so many of us, we still have this habit of gravitating towards the negative and seeking and scanning our environment for things that are going wrong. Therefore, problems are going to capture our attention the most. So using the PAS formula in your email copywriting is going to involve you starting that first sentence by pointing out a problem that your prospect has. So for example, the marketing emails that came my way were saying things like, aren't you sick of hating looking at yourself in photos or dreading the next vacation? So you tap into what people's existing problems, worries, fears are. Now, the next part of the formula A is for agitate. And agitate means to exemplify that not only do you have this problem, but here's why this problem is so bad. So you really, I almost liken it to sticking the knife in and then turning it. It's like, yeah, it's bad, but no, you don't understand how bad this problem really is. And while that might seem manipulative, I actually see agitate as more of a way to empathize with people, right? Because it's just saying, hey, you want to lose weight? Yes, you got my attention, but you didn't show me that you understood what my struggle was. So instead of seeing agitate as like, oh, pile on the negativity, it's more like, hey, not only do you have that problem, but you probably have this problem too, and it creates these negative effects in your life. That's what I see agitation as, is saying, not only do I recognize your problem, but I know that that problem sucks because of this, this, and this. So agitate is really your way of stirring up the problem in a way that causes more more discomfort. So again, we're trying to really move people into action. So we're calling out the problem and we're making that problem seem worse. So sticking with the weight loss example, this marketing email could hook me with a sentence like, don't you hate dreading seeing yourself in photos and being worried about your next vacation and being seen in a bathing suit? And then the next line, the agitation could be, I bet you've tried every weight loss plan under the sun. You've tried Whole30, you've tried keto, and all it did, if anything, was make you gain weight and lose hope that this is actually even possible for you, right? So I'm just thinking of this off the top of my head, but those are agitation. It's like, not only do I see you trying to lose weight, but I know that you've most likely been through the ringer and attempted all of these other weight loss. So you can kind of see how it not only makes the problem worse in a deceiving, like icky way, it's more just saying, hey, I see you. And then S is for solution, right? That's where you come in and say, hey, I know you have that problem. I know how bad you have it. And I have something that's going to save the day and eliminate this problem. Don't you want to find out what this is? Once you've made the prospect feel seen, once you've empathized with your prospect and now you've created that urgency that makes them want to do something about it, then you're going to come in with the solution, which is pretty much a call to action at the end of this email. So let's just rehash it. First line, don't you hate the fact that you can't lose weight and you dread seeing yourself in photos? That's the problem. Agitate. And I bet you've tried all of these other weight loss solutions. You've tried keto, you tried Whole30, and all you've done is gain weight. Now you can come in with the solution, which is the CTA. So let's say this is just a marketing email. You could say, so if you want to get off of the diet roller coaster for good and you want to stop the yo-yo weight loss, download this free guide that's going to show you how to lose weight sustainably and make this a lifestyle so that you never have to deal with this again. That was obviously not that great. Again, it's the top of my head, right? It's the problem. You agitate the problem and then you provide the solution, which is your product, your service, or your call to action. Now, here is Justin Welsh's weekly newsletter, which serves a few different purposes. Number one, this is a monetized newsletter, which is why the first thing you see is him thanking his sponsor. I really like that he says read time 4 minutes because he's pretty much acknowledging that, hey, I understand that you're short on time and this is how long it's going to take you to complete this. Now, notice his subject line. He says, your first six-figure online business from scratch. He knows his audience is mostly people who are trying to build their brand online, who want to transition from a 9-to-5 to building their own business. So obviously, this newsletter is not going to be aimed at people who have founded companies and exited and sold companies, right? This is for beginners, and he calls that out very clearly in his subject line. So knowing your audience is really key. So Justin Welsh was just on the Marketing Millennials podcast explaining how he uses his version of the PAS copywriting formula in his weekly newsletter. Everybody is going to use PAS a little bit differently. Like, it doesn't have to completely conform to that exact formula. And in the podcast episode, I recommend you go listen to it. He basically explains his twist on problem, agitate, solution. But for these purposes, I'm just going to keep it simple and highlight to you the parts of his email that do correlate to PAS. So the first line is, most people fail when they start their first online business. Boom. He's cutting right to the problem. The problem or the fear is that you want to start a business, but most people fail, and most people understand that they have a lot of obstacles ahead of them if they go down this path. Then he goes into agitation. A list of reasons why they fail is exhaustive. Wrong niche, wrong messaging, wrong ideal customer, wrong pricing structure, wrong product offering, and the list goes on, right? So right there, he points out the problem. Then he begins to agitate the problem, or in my opinion, make the prospect feel seen, because most likely they understand that they don't want to make any of those mistakes, right? They're in the process of choosing the right niche, getting their messaging fine-tuned, finding their ideal customer, and these are mistakes they want to avoid. Then he moves into the solution aspect. Want to give yourself a better chance at success. Here's the 7 steps I would follow if I was starting my business from scratch tomorrow. So that is his advice. Then he goes into obviously the tangible parts of the email where he lays out how to avoid those failures and achieve the success that he himself has achieved. The next email is from my weight loss coach, Rachel Paul, founder of Best Body. Again, not sponsored, but her program is something that I enrolled in and I really like, and I still read all of her emails. And of course, it starts with a problem. Are you feeling anxious about all the parties and extra alcohol around during the holiday season? Or are you afraid that drinking will derail your weight loss goals? Now, again, this is really compelling because Rachel Paul has a Facebook group where women are commenting daily about the struggles that they have losing weight and all of the obstacles. So all of those obstacles are surfaced in this group. I drank too much. I wasted all my calories for the day. on this beer, whatever. She knows that the women in her program are going to be especially tense around the holidays because all of the skills she's teaching about weight loss are going to become very difficult to adhere to when there is a ton of sweets and pressure and partying and your routine just gets messed up, right? Off the bat, she's tapping into an existing fear where the holidays are approaching and she knows that people are going to start being anxious about holiday weight gain. Now, as you can see, her problem and her agitation are in the same sentence. Are you feeling anxious around parties and extra alcohol during the holiday season? That's the problem, or that drinking will derail your weight loss. This is just agitation. So you can include problem and agitation in the same sentence, and then she moves right into the solution. I've got you. Here are my 5 top alcohol tips for navigating the most wonderful time of the year. And then she expounds upon principles from her online course and her coaching program, which is make a plan, choose the stuff that's worth it to you, low sugar options, little alcohol hacks so that you're not consuming so much. So again, this is really, really simple. You're starting out with a problem that's going to make people's ears perk up, and then you are presenting a solution to them. Now here is Ed Gandia, somebody I really respect in the copywriting world. Like me, he sells programs that help other writers. So again, he starts off, the content marketing world is changing rapidly and so are client expectations. That's the problem. Now he's going to agitate. Being just a writer, even a great one, is no longer going to guarantee a great living. So again, he's agitating. Like, as writers, we can really resonate with this. We know things are changing. We know that content marketing is this sphere that we really need to keep up with. And we know that our livelihood is based on client expectations, right? So he's tapping right into something that's already on our mind. And then he's moving right into agitation. It's like, not only are things changing so rapidly, but just being a good writer is no longer enough to be successful. It's not going to guarantee that you make a lot of money just because you're a good writer. So he's really sticking the knife in and being like, not only are things changing so rapidly, but the skills that you've been relying on might not necessarily be what you need to get ahead. So now he's building urgency. I'm like, oh, okay. Not only are things changing so rapidly, but I don't even have the skills necessary to keep up with those changes. What's next? So then he goes into his solution. You need to move up the value chain, and a great way to do that is offer content strategy and planning services to your clients. And obviously, he linked out the content strategy part because he wants to be the one to teach you how to offer that service. He's providing the solution. As you can see, his email doesn't adhere to just problem, agitate, solution. He expounds and goes into further detail. But again, you can always kind of pick up on these hooks when you read a good email that somebody presented the problem, they agitated it a bit, and then they presented the solution. Now, this is a marketing email from a company called AirMe, and they are trying to promote a webinar about their event software. So as you can see in the first sentences, he says every marketer is trying to achieve the same thing, a winning event strategy. He's tapping into what the goal or desire is. So that kind of deviates from the problem, but he's saying every event marketer is looking for this strategy. So it kind of hints at a problem, even though technically I would say that's a desire, but at least it follows the formula. Then he expounds a little bit on the problem and what their goal is. But then this line right here, we get it. Event reporting can feel complicated and leave us asking ourselves a lot of questions, like how do you quantify the benefit of a network event or gauge the value of brand awareness event? That's the agitation, right? He's tapping into, not only are you looking for this strategy, but I bet you're asking yourself these questions. And then he moves into the solution. Well, AirMe Episode 8 has the answers to these questions and more. Join Head of Marketing Mark from User Pilot, and they want you to register. You can see the call to action right there, register now. So that's a good example because obviously this one is highly branded and it's promoting a webinar, a free, it's not trying to sell you something in that moment. Now I'm going to share with you my tip for becoming a better email copywriter and getting better results for my clients, strengthening that email copywriting muscle every day. So I'm going to share with you the 2 files that I add to whenever I see inspiration. And this trick is keeping a swipe file that you constantly add information to. A swipe file is just a document that holds all of the stuff that you find inspiring, and it'll jog your mind and help you come up with ideas later. When you see a good email, you want to capture that email and what it is that stood out to you about it so that you can refer back to it later. And actually, on the subject of Justin Welsh, he did say this in the podcast episode that something he has started doing is that when he's scrolling or when he's opening emails and something captures his attention, he goes to open it, instead of just continuing to swipe by, scroll by, whatever, he actually analyzes what about that email or that social media post or that subject line captured his attention so that he can draw inspiration from it later and take note of it. And as copywriters or somebody who's trying to sell products or services online, we want to be more aware of what captures our attention, because most likely there's a psychological cue that's going to capture a customer's attention and make you a sale in the future. So that's what I do with these two files. One is a Word doc and another is an Excel sheet. The Word doc is going to have all of the subject lines that you're collecting so that you can refer back to them later and use them when you're writing emails. Now, this is my document. The first part of the document, you can see this is like H2s with some supplementary information. That's because I got these subject lines from copywriting books that I read. And then as time went by, I just started adding stuff that I would see on social media. I would screenshot it and add it to this document. So I have this rolling document of 25 subject lines that I can refer to and use when I need it. And they're basically formulas, and I'm not starting from scratch. Now, the next document is this Excel sheet where I keep track of my results. What we constantly want to be doing as marketers is testing our open rates and our click-through rates. Now, at the time of me recording this, click-through rates weigh much more heavily than open rates because of that iOS update I mentioned at the top of this video. So now iPhone users, which the majority of people are using iPhones, have settings that completely obscure open rates. So open rates are not as reliable as they once were. Unfortunately, it's still a good metric, but just know it doesn't weigh as heavily as probably click-through rate, which means somebody not only opened your email, but was so enticed that they clicked into it. So I keep track of my highest converting subject lines. This is going to be hard if you're just a freelance copywriter and you're not getting those results shared with you by your clients. But for me, I'm somebody who actually sells a digital course online, and I have an email list that I'm constantly emailing and nurturing and selling to, so I can look at the open rates and the click-through rates. Something you should know: with open and click-through rates, keep in mind that they are highly based on the size of the email list, right? So as you can see here, I got a 5.7% click-through rate, but the smaller your email list, the higher a click-through rate will be, even if 10 people clicked that link, right? So the more people you're emailing, your open and subject lines will naturally go down a little bit. So you have to understand the full context when you're reading these metrics. Taking screenshots on your phone is one of the easiest ways to keep this a rolling document in terms of what subject lines work. I have this labeled subject line vault, but as you can see on my phone, literally I am screenshotting when people recommend good subject lines, or I'm screenshotting things and putting it in my Asana board when something captures my attention. So whatever the easiest way for you to do it in the moment before you start scrolling again is going to be most effective. If you want to write for a living, you are definitely going to want to check out my free guide below, where I show you how to cold pitch clients on LinkedIn and build a full-time freelance career as a writer. Definitely check that out. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.